Welcome back to the deep dive. It is Sunday, February 22nd, 2026. And, if you've been following the industry news this week or, frankly, just trying to keep your own systems running, you've probably noticed that the ground beneath us has completely shifted.
Oh, absolutely. It's shifting every day.
Right. We aren't just dealing with security in the traditional sense anymore. The whole conversation has moved way beyond firewalls and, annual phishing training into something much more existential.
It really has. The pace is just frantic right now.
Yeah.
If you look at the delta between where we were in, say, 2023 and where we are today in early 2026, it's not just an evolution.
No.
It's a completely different species of problem.
Exactly. I was looking through the stack of reports for today. We've got the Palo Alto Unit 42 Outlook, the new Everbridge data, the SEC guidelines, and the vibe across all of them it's not how do we stop the hackers anymore.
Yeah, that ship has sailed.
Right. It feels way more like how do we survive the inevitable? We are talking about automated AI warfare, regulatory frameworks that have teeth sharp enough to just shut your business down, and surprisingly, a return to physical infrastructure survival.
Yeah, we are firmly in what the industry is calling the expanding risk zone.
The expanding risk zone.
That's the term coalescing right now, and I think it fits perfectly.
It sounds incredibly ominous, but looking at the data, it's accurate. The concept that really jumped out at me from the Everbridge report was this idea of the poly crisis.
Ah, yes. The polycrisis.
This feels like the defining word for 2026.
It is, because the polycrisis is basically the recognition that threats just don't wait their turn anymore.
Right.
In the old days, you might deal with a server outage on a Tuesday and maybe a phishing attempt next month.
A nice orderly queue of problems.
Exactly. But now, you're dealing with a supply chain collapse that triggers a regulatory audit, and that is coinciding with a cyber attack that's actively exploiting the chaos. All while, a severe weather event is threatening your physical data center.
They amplify each other.
They absolutely amplify each other. It's a cascading failure model.
So it's like the perfect storm as a permanent state of being.
That is a great way to put it. And if you're still operating with that siloed mindset where IT fixes the computers, legal handles the contracts, and facilities worries about the backup generator, the polycrisis is going to eat you alive.
Because you're fragmented.
Right. You cannot solve interconnected problems with disconnected departments.
So that really frames our mission for today's deep dive. We are going to unpack the survival guide for 2026. We need to look at how the threat landscape has fundamentally changed with AI, why the regulators have moved from trust to hard evidence, and why the backup strategies that worked even 2 years ago are effectively useless today.
Honestly, useless might be too kind. Dangerous is probably more accurate for those old backup strategies. It gives a false sense of security.
Fair point. And look, for everyone listening, we know navigating this is an absolute minefield. You need the right partners. Throughout this discussion, we're going to touch on where you can actually find help. Because if you're looking for vendors who meet these new stringent standards, you really should be vetting them through www.cisomarketplace.com.
Essential tool right now.
It really is. And on the flip side, if you need to know which of your third parties has already dropped the ball so you can protect your own network, you've got to keep an eye on www.breach.company. Because intelligence is the only way you get through this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You cannot defend against what you can't see, and you certainly can't partner with people you can't trust.
Okay, so let's get into the meat of it. Segment 1, the threat landscape of 2026. I want to start with that Palo Alto Network's Unit 42 report. We've always heard that attacks are getting faster, right? That's been the headline for a decade. But the data here suggests we've hit some sort of tipping point.
We have. It's not just speed anymore. It's compression.
Compression, break that down for me.
Well, the attack lifecycle, reconnaissance, initial access, lateral movement, exfiltration, that whole process used to take weeks, sometimes months.
Right, they'd sit in the network and look around.
Exactly. But in 2025, we saw the exfiltration speeds for the fastest attacks literally quadruple.
Quadruple. 4 times faster in 1 year. That is staggering.
It is. And the reason for that compression is that human hands aren't on the keyboard for the heavy lifting anymore.
It's the AI.
It's the AI.
Yeah.
We are seeing AI being used as a massive force multiplier at every single stage of the attack. In the past, a human attacker had to manually map your network, figure out where the database was, and then custom write a script to copy it out.
Which takes time. It takes breaks. It sleeps.
Right. Now, AI agents automate the entire command and control infrastructure. They write bespoke malware on the fly to evade your specific endpoint detection tools.
So while your SOC analyst is, grabbing a coffee or triaging some low-level alert, the AI adversary has already mapped the topology and started moving terabytes of data.
Exactly. It is machine speed versus human speed. And humans lose that race every single time.
Wow.
But there is another layer to this AI threat that the Everbridge report points out, which I honestly find even more concerning than the speed.
More concerning than the speed. What is it?
The accessibility.
Ah, okay. The double-edged sword concept they mentioned.
Yes. The barrier to entry has essentially collapsed. Think about it. 2 years ago, running a highly sophisticated polymorphic phishing campaign required real technical skill.
You needed a team, or at least you needed to be pretty dedicated.
Exactly. You had to know what you were doing. Now, you literally just need a subscription to an uncensored LLM.
So we really aren't seeing those classic, dear sir or madam emails with all the broken English and weird formatting anymore.
Not at all. Those are relics. These tools generate communications that are incredibly context-aware. They are tonally perfect. They are mathematically indistinguishable from a legitimate email from your actual CEO or your legal counsel.
Because the AI can just ingest the CEO's previous public writing and mimic the voice perfectly.
Exactly. So you have a situation where highly sophisticated military-grade psychological operations can be run by relatively unskilled actors.
Which segues perfectly into the identity crisis that's mentioned in the Unit 42 report. Because if the emails look perfect and they trick someone into handing over credentials, well, hacking isn't really the right word anymore, is it?
It's not. And yet the industry is still completely obsessed with the idea of breaking in.
The guy in the hoodie smashing through the firewall.
Right, exploiting some zero-day vulnerability.
Yeah.
But Unit 42 found that identity weaknesses played a role in nearly 90% of their investigations.
90%. I mean, that effectively means the perimeter is gone.
It means attackers aren't breaking in. They are logging in.
They are logging in. That's chilling.
They are using stolen credentials, session tokens, stolen cookies. If you look at the radical data science analysis, they posit that here in 2026, identity intelligence is basically the only metric that matters anymore.
How so?
Well, if you can't distinguish between a legitimate employee logging in from a local coffee shop and an attacker in a basement half a world away using that same employee's valid session cookie, you are defenseless.
Because the system just sees the valid cookie and opens the door.
Exactly. It says, welcome back.
And this isn't just criminal ransomware gangs doing this anymore. The report really highlights a shift in nation-state tactics, too.
Yeah.
China, North Korea, Iran. They've moved away from the loud smash-and-grab stuff to something much more subtle.
Persona-driven infiltration.
Yes, let's talk about that. It is fascinating and terrifying.
It really is an evolution. Instead of just dropping malware, they are using fake employees, synthetic identities.
Literally inventing people.
Yes. They generate a persona, they apply for remote jobs at your company, they pass the video interview using real-time deepfake tech.
Which is seamless now.
Completely seamless. They get hired and boom. You now have a nation-state actor sitting inside your perimeter legally using the corporate laptop that you mailed to them.
That is wild. And once they are in, they use living off the land tactics, which I've always found to be the most insidious method.
It's incredibly efficient. Why bring your own custom malware, which might trigger an antivirus alert, when you can just use the administrative tools that are already installed on the victim's machine?
Right. The tools the IT department put there on purpose.
Exactly. They use PowerShell. They use remote management software. They abuse standard SaaS integrations.
It just blends right in with the background noise of the network.
Perfectly. If the network traffic looks like a legitimate API call to Salesforce or just a standard admin script running a backup, your security tools are just going to ignore it. It's trusted activity.
There was one specific incident in the source material that I think illustrates this blending in perfectly. The ClickFix campaign.
Oh, the ClickFix campaign, yes.
Okay. I really want to walk through that one because it is such a pure human failure, not a technical one. It shows exactly how the human is the weak link.
It's a masterclass in social engineering meeting technical simplicity. It targets the user's frustration, which is brilliant.
Okay, so let's set the scene for the listener. You have an employee at a major global industrial firm. It's their lunch break. They're just browsing the web on their work machine.
Right. And keep in mind, they aren't on the dark web. They aren't trying to pirate movies. They are Googling a menu for a local restaurant or maybe looking for a generic software solution to a problem they have.
Totally normal behavior.
But the attackers have used SEO poisoning to get their spoofed malicious sites to the very top of those Google search results.
Which we know happens constantly. But what happens next is the real twist here.
So the user clicks the link to look at the menu. But instead of seeing the menu, they get a pop-up overlay. And it looks exactly like a native browser system message or a legitimate plugin error.
Something we've all seen 100 times.
Right. It says something like, to view this content, you need to update your browser, or fix this display error. And it provides a string of PowerShell script right there in the dialog window.
It actually shows them the code.
It shows them the code,
Yeah.
and it gives them explicit instructions. It says, press Windows key plus R, type PowerShell, and paste this code to fix the issue.
And people do it.
They do it. Because we have conditioned users for 20 years to just click OK or update or run to get what they want on a screen.
So they essentially bypass their own corporate security controls.
They literally execute the malware themselves manually with their own keyboard.
Wow.
In one specific case highlighted in the reports, a medical tech firm got completely compromised because an admin downloaded what he thought was a simple tool update. It didn't work. So he, trying to be a helpful guy, sent the link to a domain admin via Microsoft Teams.
Oh no, the helpful colleague vector.
He says, hey, can you get this working for me? And the domain admin trusts his colleague. Why wouldn't he?
That's coming from inside the house.
Exactly. So the domain admin runs the script. Boom. Ransomware is instantly deployed across the entire environment. Manufacturing halted, shipping frozen, all because someone just wanted to fix a display error on a web page.
It really highlights that you can spend millions and millions of dollars on AI defense, but if you can't protect the human from themselves, you have a massive gaping hole in your armor.
I do.
And I think that the fact that prevention is failing so often, despite all the money spent, is exactly what is driving this massive shift in the regulatory landscape that we are seeing in 2026.
It is the primary driver. The regulators have finally realized that stopping the hack is a losing battle. The bad guys are going to get in. So the regulatory bodies are pivoting hard from prevent the breach to survive the breach.
Let's talk about that pivot. Segment 2. We're calling it the regulatory hammer because a few years ago, compliance was mostly just a box-checking exercise. You have a policy, great. You are compliant.
That was the assurance model.
The assurance model.
Trust me, I have a plan. You would show the auditor a nicely formatted PDF titled Disaster Recovery Plan 2024. The auditor skims it, checks a box on their clipboard, and you're good for another year. Nobody ever asked if the plan actually works. Now we are living in the evidence model. That PDF is absolutely worthless. With the SEC's 2026 priorities, DORA in the European Union, NIS2, the UK's Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, the whole language of compliance has changed.
They don't care about your PDF.
They don't want to know if you have a plan. They want mathematical proof that your plan works under fire.
This brings up the uncomfortable truth that the Kavenko source talks about.
It is deeply uncomfortable because, let's be honest, most companies cannot do it. They cannot prove it. The regulators and, crucially, the cyber insurance carriers are demanding verified evidence of end-to-end recoverability.
They want the receipts.
They want the logs from your last actual restore test. They want to see the timestamps proving you spun up the backup and it ran.
Because if you can't prove you can recover, you are a systemic liability to the market.
Exactly. Look at the SEC's posture right now. Their focus on operational readiness is a direct response to these massive systemic failures we've seen. They're asking boards of directors, if you get hit with ransomware on a Friday night, can you open the markets on Monday morning?
And if you just point to a policy document...
If the answer is, we have a plan, but we haven't tested a full restore in 2 years, that is no longer just poor IT management. That is a material compliance violation. You will be fined, or worse.
It really seems like auditors are behaving a lot more like forensic investigators now. The Palo Alto report mentions they are specifically hunting for things like permission opacity and inventory gaps.
They are digging deep into the weeds. Permission opacity is just a very fancy regulatory way of saying, do you actually know who has access to what in your own network?
And the scary truth is, most organizations don't.
They don't. Bob from accounting changed roles 3 years ago and still has admin access to the HR database. That's permission opacity. And inventory gaps. I mean, it's cybersecurity 101, but you cannot protect what you don't know you have.
Right.
Auditors want to see a comprehensive vendor inventory, and it must have criticality tiers.
Criticality tiers. So distinguishing between the company caterer and the core cloud database provider.
Exactly. You need to know definitively which vendors are mission critical. If your payment processor goes down, your business is dead. If your logo design vendor gets hacked, it's annoying, but it's survivable.
You keep the lights on.
You have to prove to the auditor that you know the difference and that you are actively monitoring the risk posture of those critical partners.
Which is exactly where those resources we mentioned earlier become absolutely vital. You cannot just guess at vendor risk anymore or take their word for it. Going to www.cisomarketplace.com ensures you're actually picking vendors that meet these heavy evidence-based standards.
It saves you from buying a liability.
And checking www.breached.company lets you know if your supposedly secure vendor is currently fighting a 5-alarm fire that they just haven't disclosed to you yet.
Exactly. The old mantra of trust but verify is dead in 2026. It is now verify again, then ask for the system logs.
I want to clear up a technical point here that always seems to confuse people, and it's so crucial for this whole evidence discussion. It's a difference between SSAE 18 and SOC 2. Because I hear executives say, we are SSAE 18 certified all the time.
Oh, me too. And it is an immediate red flag. It tells me they don't actually know what they're talking about.
Break it down for us. The RSI security data lays this out perfectly.
It does. SSAE 18 is the standard. It is the rule book that the auditors follow when they evaluate you. Yeah. You do not get certified in the rule book.
You don't get an SSAE 18 diploma to hang on the wall.
No. So what you actually get is a SOC 2 report, which is generated by the auditor using the SSAE 18 standards.
Okay, that makes sense. Standard versus report. But the real distinction that matters for survival in 2026 is between a Type 1 and a Type 2 report.
Yes. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Explain the difference.
Think of a Type 1 report as a photograph. It says, on February 22nd at 9 a.m., the security controls were designed correctly.
Which sounds good on paper.
It's great for that exact millisecond. But what about February 23rd? What about 3 months later when the lead admin goes on vacation and someone misconfigures a firewall?
Right, the photograph doesn't show that.
A Type 2 report is a movie. It tests the actual effectiveness of those controls over a continuous period of time, usually 6 to 12 months.
So it proves you are actually doing the work every day.
It proves that the backup actually ran every single night for 6 months, not just the night before the auditors showed up. In this current regulatory climate, a Type 1 report is almost useless for proving true resilience.
If a vendor hands you a Type 1, you should be asking very hard questions.
You should be asking why they can't produce a Type 2. The regulators want the movie. They don't care about the photo anymore.
That makes total sense. And this intense demand for evidence and continuous resilience is forcing a massive structural change inside companies, too. Which brings us to segment 3. We are seeing a convergence of two worlds that, historically, kind of hated each other.
Security and continuity.
The breaking of the silos.
It is long, long overdue.
Historically, security was the Department of No, right? They locked the doors, they blocked the websites, they said no to new apps. And continuity was the Department of If. What if the building burns down? What if the server crashes?
And they had completely different budgets, different reporting lines to the board, and fundamentally different cultures.
But in 2026, keeping them separate is basically corporate negligence.
It is. We are finally seeing the forced integration of ISO 27001, which is information security, with ISO 22301, which is business continuity.
Why is this merger so critical to survive right now?
The SGS source gives a really perfect example of what happens when they are kept separate. Imagine a large e-commerce retailer. They went out and got their ISO 27001 certification. They had top-tier encryption, next-gen firewalls, strict access controls. By all metrics, they were secure.
So the customer data was totally safe.
The data was perfectly safe, but they got hit with a novel ransomware attack that completely locked up their customer service platform and their logistics routing systems. Now, the attackers didn't steal the credit card numbers. Security did its job.
But the business stopped.
Exactly. They couldn't ship a single box.
Yeah.
They couldn't answer a customer email. And because they didn't have ISO 22301, the continuity side integrated into their operations, they had absolutely no plan for a manual workaround.
No backup plan.
No paper pick lists for the warehouse. No alternative phone routing for the call center. They just sat there, dead in the water for a full week, bleeding money, even though technically they were secure.
That distinction is huge. Being secure does not mean you are resilient.
No. And resilience is a cold, hard financial calculation. The novel Vista data points out that unexpected downtime now costs an average of $300,000 per hour.
$300,000 an hour. That burns through your quarterly profit margin incredibly fast.
It does. That is why you need to evaluate where you sit on the ISO 22301 maturity model. You cannot survive at level 1 anymore.
Level 1 being just ad hoc or reactive.
Right, running around with your hair on fire trying to figure out who has the server password when it crashes.
Yeah.
You need to be aiming for level 5.
Optimized and integrated.
Where security controls and continuity plans are designed together from day one.
Now, speaking of continuity, there is a layer here that I think a lot of us, especially digital native folks, completely forget about. We spend so much time talking about the cloud, we forget the cloud actually lives on the ground in a physical building.
The physical layer.
Yes. The 2026 Resilience Compendium has a whole section dedicated to physical security.
ISO 27001 Annex A7.5. Securing the physical shell.
It feels almost retro to be talking about things like bomb blast film and flood ropes when we were just talking about AI attackers, but apparently it's making a massive comeback.
It's not retro at all, it's reality. Climate change and rising geopolitical instability, tying back to that polycrisis concept, mean that physical threats to infrastructure are rising exponentially.
Let's talk about some of these physical defenses, the flood ropes. It sounds so simple, but explain the mechanism for the listener.
It is brilliantly simple. In a proper data center, you usually have a raised floor. All the network cabling and the cooling pipes run underneath that floor. Flood ropes are literally moisture-sensing cables that you lay down in a grid in that subfloor.
Oh, so they detect the leak before the water level ever hits the actual server rack.
Right. If a cooling pipe bursts or groundwater starts to seep into the facility, the rope detects the moisture instantly and sends an alert, pinpointing the exact physical location. You catch the problem when it's a puddle.
Not when it's a swimming pool destroying your sand storage.
Exactly. And another big one is gas suppression.
Right, because you can't just put sprinklers over millions of dollars of hardware.
If you dump water on a rack of high-end GPUs, you've ruined them just as effectively as the fire would have. So they use systems like FM200. It floods the room with a gas that mathematically lowers the oxygen level just enough to choke out the fire, but not enough to kill a human who happens to be in the room. And it leaves the hardware completely intact.
Incredible. And then there are the plinths. This one really struck me as the ultimate low-tech solution to a high-tech problem.
The plinth is my favorite. It's literally just a metal stand. It raises the server rack 150 millimeters,
Yeah.
about 6 inches off the concrete floor.
That's it. 6 inches of metal.
That's it. But think about a flash flood, or even just a standard sprinkler malfunction in a hallway that runs into the server room. You might get 2 or 3 inches of standing water on the floor.
Which is a disaster if the rack is flush to the ground.
If your rack is sitting directly on the concrete, the bottom servers, which are usually the incredibly heavy battery backups or your most critical storage arrays, are completely underwater. They short out, you lose the whole rack.
But if they are on a plinth?
You get a mop. The servers stay perfectly dry, your uptime isn't impacted, you keep running. It is a completely negligible cost for a massive, massive reduction in physical risk. It's the hierarchy of needs.
You can have the best AI-driven firewall in the world, but if your database is underwater, it doesn't matter.
Physics wins. Every single time.
Physics always wins. Okay, let's pivot to segment 4, the technical last line of defense. Backups. If the physical walls hold, but the hackers do get past the firewall, backups are your safety net. But reading these reports, it seems like the net is full of holes lately.
The net is actively being targeted. That is the massive shift in ransomware. Ransomware operators aren't stupid, they run a business. They know that if you have a fast working backup, you are not going to pay their multi-million-dollar ransom.
So they take out the backup.
As Souls magazine points out, they target the backup infrastructure first, before they do anything else.
They burn the lifeboats before they sink the ship.
That's exactly it. They get into the network, and they hunt quietly for the backup console. They steal the admin credentials. They delete the volume shadow copies on the servers. They encrypt or wipe the backup repository itself.
Leaving you with nothing.
Once they are absolutely sure you have zero leverage and no way to restore your data, then they encrypt the production environment and send you the ransom demand.
Which is why the Gigamon source bluntly says prevention is dead. You just have to assume they are already inside.
You have to design your entire architecture for failure. And that brings us to the evolution of the old 3-2-1 rule.
Right. We've all been taught 3-2-1 for decades in IT. 3 copies of your data on 2 different media types with 1 copy offsite.
In 2026, 3-2-1 is insufficient. It will not save you.
So what is the new standard we need to be aiming for?
The 321110 resilience framework. This is being championed heavily by folks like Kavenko and ConnectWise.
Okay, let's parse those additions. What is the first extra 1-1?
One copy must be immutable or air-gapped. This is completely non-negotiable now.
Okay, let's define those buzzwords. I hear immutable thrown around constantly in marketing materials. What does it actually mean in practice? Is it just setting a file to read only?
It is mathematically much stronger than that. True immutability means the storage system itself is configured at a fundamental level to reject any delete, modify, or overwrite command for a set period of time, say 30 days.
Even if I'm the system administrator?
Even if you are the root admin, even if the Russian hacker has your primary password and your MFA token. They log into the backup console, they select your mission-critical database backup, they hit delete all, and the storage array literally says, I cannot execute that command.
It creates a digital bunker that cannot be compromised just by stealing credentials.
Exactly. ConnectWise has been pushing this hard
Yeah.
with their Buy 360 Recover product. The data is locked.
And what about air-gapped? Is that just the physical version of the same concept?
Yes. An air gap is a copy of the data that is physically, or at least completely logically, isolated from the production network. It is the break glass in case of emergency vault.
Like an offline tape drive.
IBM and Solve Magazine talk about this a lot. If the polycrisis hits and every single thing connected to the internet is corrupted or encrypted, you have a physical tape or a hard drive sitting on a shelf that was untouched because no electrons could reach it.
Okay. And what about the 0 at the end of 32110?
Zero errors. This goes right back to the evidence discussion we had earlier. It refers to automated recovery verification.
So this is more than just getting that morning email that says backup job completed successfully.
Oh, that email is a lie half the time. Anyway, job completed just means the data was copied from point A to point B. It does not mean the file actually works or isn't corrupted.
Right.
Zero errors means you use automation to actually spin up the backup file into an isolated virtual machine. The system boots it up to the OS login screen, takes a digital screenshot, verifies that the easel services are actually running, and then shuts it down.
You essentially test the full restore every single night.
Every single night, automatically. If you aren't testing the restore, you do not have a backup. You have a hope. And hope is not a corporate strategy.
There's one more concept in this backup section that I found really compelling, the clean room. Because even if you have an immutable backup that you know works, how do you know the backup itself isn't already infected?
That is the nightmare scenario. You get hit with ransomware on a Wednesday. You confidently restore from Tuesday's immutable backup.
You feel like a hero.
But the attacker has actually been lingering in your network for 2 weeks, planting time bombs. So you restore the backup, and you bring the dormant malware right back into the environment with it.
The loop of death.
Exactly. You get reinfected instantly. A clean room is a sterile, completely isolated environment, usually hosted in the cloud, where you restore the data first. You do not connect it to your production network.
You quarantine it.
You quarantine it and you scour it.
Yeah.
You run every next-gen antivirus engine you have against it. You patch any vulnerabilities you find while it's in the sandbox. And only when it is absolutely certified clean do you migrate that data back into your live production environment.
It's essentially forensic sanitation.
It is. In 2026, you cannot just click restore. You have to restore and then sanitize.
It is incredible how much complexity has been added to what used to be a simple nightly tape backup job.
It's a completely different discipline now.
Which brings us to our fifth and final segment. We've talked about the AI attackers moving at machine speed. We've talked about physical defense. We've talked about indestructible backups. But we have to talk about AI defenders.
AI versus AI. This is the only future for security operations.
Because, as we established, humans are simply too slow to click the mouse. So we have to fight fire with fire.
We have to. If the attacker's moving at machine speed, our defense absolutely must match it. Security Operations Centers, or SOCs, are rapidly moving to AI-driven playbooks.
How does that actually look in the real world? Like, what does the AI do?
Take the Sinet example from the research. The AI system is constantly monitoring the network baseline. It sees an anomalous attack pattern, let's say, a rapid sequential encryption of files happening on an endpoint in the marketing department.
A ransomware detonation.
Exactly. The AI does not generate a ticket and page a human analyst to look at it. It executes a remediation playbook instantly. It logically isolates that specific machine from the network, it kills the encryption process, and it automatically resets the user's Active Directory credentials.
All before a human even sees the alert pop up on the screen.
By the time the human opens the dashboard to see what the beep was, the threat is already neutralized. IDC is predicting that by the end of 2026, these playbooks won't even be pre-written. They'll be dynamic. X's and O's created on the fly, is how they put it.
Meaning the AI writes the defense script in real time.
The AI will analyze the highly specific behavior of the novel attack and generate a custom response strategy in milliseconds.
Okay, that sounds like the holy grail of cybersecurity.
Okay,
But I have to play devil's advocate here. Is there a massive risk in giving an AI the keys to the castle and letting it shut things down autonomously?
there is huge risk. Radical data science calls it the era of self-inflicted outages.
The AI overreacts to something benign.
Imagine, it is Black Friday. You are a major online retailer. Your web traffic spikes 5,000% in 10 minutes because your marketing team just launched a massive successful sale.
Great for business.
The AI defense system looks at that massive influx of traffic, compares it to the standard Tuesday baseline, and says, this looks exactly like a distributed denial of service attack, a DDoS.
Oh no, and it shuts the front door.
It blocks all incoming traffic to save the web servers. So the network is perfectly safe, but you just lost your biggest revenue-generating day of the entire year. The AI effectively killed the patient to cure the disease.
Wow, so the human in the loop is still absolutely essential.
Completely essential. You need governance. You need strict guardrails on what the AI is allowed to kill. The AI is the engine providing the speed, but the human still has to be the steering wheel providing the business context.
That makes sense. Now, this AI application extends to the supply chain too, right? Using AI not just to fight active hacks, but to essentially read the paperwork.
Yes, this is the Syrian use case, and I think it's brilliant. We mentioned earlier how critical it is to continuously vet your vendors, but reading thousands of pages of SOC2 reports and legal contracts to find out if every vendor promises AES 256 encryption. That's impossible for a human legal team to do continuously.
It would take years, and by the time you finish, the contracts are out of date.
Syrian uses AI to ingest all of those complex vendor contracts and build a dynamic SOC2 Type 2 contract repository. It automatically flags the vendors who don't meet your specific security standards.
It turns a massive reading comprehension problem into a simple data problem.
Exactly. It automates compliance.
It really is a fascinating ecosystem we find ourselves in. I mean, in the span of an hour, we've gone from talking about applying literal bomb blast film on Windows to using LLMs to read legal contracts.
That is the nature of the polycrisis. It touches absolutely everything, physical and digital.
So, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We went from AI threat actors compressing the attack cycle to the regulatory hammer demanding hard evidence. We covered the necessary marriage of security and continuity, the 3-2-1-1-0 backup framework, and finally, the AI defense systems. If we boil all of this down for the listener, what is the core takeaway, the so what for 2026?
The core takeaway is that resilience is now your primary competitive advantage. It is no longer just an IT cost center or compliance box to check. In 2026, your clients know the risks. They watch the news. They know everyone eventually gets hit.
So they are looking for stability.
The company that can look a client in the eye and say, we have tested our mutability, we have integrated our continuity, and we will be here tomorrow morning to serve you no matter what happens today. That is the company that wins the enterprise contract.
Resilience builds profound trust.
It does. It is the currency of trust. And I'll leave you with this final, really provocative thought from the Aon report we reviewed. They stated very plainly, cyber resilience is a distributed problem.
Meaning it doesn't just sit on the CISO's desk.
Exactly. It is not just an IT problem anymore. If your board of directors isn't looking at actual tested recoverability as a primary key performance indicator for the business, your company is already incredibly vulnerable.
It's a fundamental business survival problem.
Precisely. Everyone, from the CEO to the warehouse manager, owns a piece of the resilience puzzle now.
Well, that is certainly enough to make me want to go check the logs on my own backups tonight. I have a sneaking suspicion I might be missing the 0 in my 32110 setup.
You and most other people, seriously, go run a test restore. You'll sleep better.
I will do exactly that. And thank you to everyone for tuning into this deep dive. A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through this absolute minefield of a topic. And of course, a final reminder to check out www.cisomarketplace.com if you need to find vetted partners who actually understand all of this, and keep checking www.breach.company to monitor the real-time threat landscape around your supply chain. Stay safe, stay resilient out there, and we will see you in the next deep dive.
Stay safe, everyone. Test those backups.